Between contractions in the delivery room, I glanced at my husband Michael's buzzing phone to see a message from Vanessa that read, "Can't wait to see you later. Miss you so much." As he snatched the device away, stammering about, "Just someone." From work, a strange calm washed over me, even as my body worked to bring our daughter into the world. Most women would have screamed or fallen apart, but I'm not most women. What my husband didn't realize as he nervously texted his mistress from the corner of my hospital room was that in 9 months, I hadn't just created new life, I'd been creating a plan. And one day soon, the woman he was betraying me with would be working at the very bottom of my corporate empire, never knowing that her new boss was the wife her lover had underestimated. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The labor lasted 27 hours. 27 hours of physical agony compounded by the emotional earthquake that had just rocked my world. Throughout it all, Michael paced the delivery room, his attention split between his laboring wife and his glowing phone screen. Each time he glanced at it, I memorized the subtle shifts in his expression, the slight smile, the quick typing, the way he angled the screen away from me. I'd built my career on reading people. As the founder and CEO of Meridian Technologies, I'd negotiated contracts with some of the shrewdest minds in the tech industry. I could spot a lie across a conference table, could feel the moment someone was trying to hide something from me. And now, those same instincts were screaming at me in the delivery room. Our daughter Emma came into the world at 3:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces of pure possibility. As I held her against my chest, feeling her tiny heartbeat against mine, I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. The doctor was still working, the nurses were still bustling around, and Michael was still stealing glances at his phone. "Could you put your phone away?" I asked softly, my eyes on our daughter. "Just for a little while?" He looked startled, as if he'd forgotten I could see him. "Sorry, just checking in with the office." Another lie. I smiled, the kind of smile I'd perfected in boardrooms, all teeth and no warmth. Of course. The next 3 days in the hospital were a strange ballet of new parenthood and silent reconnaissance. While Michael dozed in the visitor's chair, I used my own phone to check our shared accounts. Credit card statements revealed dinners for 2 at restaurants I'd never visited. Location history showed frequent stops at an apartment complex across town. And then there were the texts, hundreds of them, exchanged at all hours with Vanessa. Didn't confront him. Not yet. I'd learned long ago that information was power, and I needed all the power I could get. By the time we brought Emma home to our penthouse apartment, I had compiled a dossier on Vanessa Parker. LinkedIn told me she was a mid-level marketing executive at a rival tech firm. Instagram showed me her preference for expensive wines and weekend trips to Napa. Facebook revealed a woman with ambition written across every carefully curated post. What interested me most, however, was her professional trajectory. Vanessa had job-hopped every 18 months, always landing slightly above where qualifications would normally place her. The pattern was clear to someone who knew how to look. She was sleeping her way up the corporate ladder. And now, she has set her sights on my husband, the chief operating officer of my company. What she didn't know, what Michael had apparently failed to mention, was that while he carried the impressive title, the company was mine. I had founded Meridian Technologies in my garage 10 years ago, built it from nothing while Michael was still finishing his MBA. He had joined 3 years later, bringing valuable connections and a head for operations that complemented my technical vision. We made a good team, professionally speaking. I spent the first 2 weeks of Emma's life in a strange, suspended state. On the surface, I was a new mother, learning the rhythms of feeding schedules and diaper changes. Beneath that, I was a woman, betrayed, calculating my next move with the same precision I applied to business strategy. Michael's behavior made it easy. He volunteered for late nights at the office, claiming weekend emergencies that required his presence. He was there for the Instagram-worthy moments with Emma, but absent for the 3 a.m. feedings, the endless crying jags, the real work of parenthood. "I'm sorry," he'd say, kissing me absently on the forehead. "Big client meeting tomorrow. You understand?" I did understand, more than he knew. At 3 weeks postpartum, I made my first move. It was subtle. A text while he was in the shower. "Can you pick up dinner tonight? Meeting running late." The phone buzzed with Vanessa's reply almost instantly. "Wrong person?" I waited until Michael emerged from the bathroom, towel around his waist, whistling some nameless tune. "Your phone buzzed," I said, not looking up from Emma at my breast. He grabbed it quickly, his face falling as he saw the notification. "Just work?" he muttered. "Seems like you're always working these days," I observed mildly. "Anything I should know about? Any company issues I should be aware of?" Michael had the decency to look uncomfortable. "No, everything's fine. Just busy with the Richardson account." Another lie. We had no Richardson account. That night, after he left claiming another work emergency, I opened my laptop and began phase 2 of my plan. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't call him with accusations. Instead, I logged into our company database and began reviewing personnel needs for the coming quarter. Meridian was expanding, opening a new division focused on artificial intelligence, applications in healthcare. We needed staff, qualified people who could hit the ground running. I made notes, drafted job descriptions, and thought about the future. The next morning, I called our head of HR. "Janet, I need you to post some positions for the new AI division," I said, bouncing Emma gently as she fussed. "And I want to be personally involved in the interview process for the marketing director role." "Of course, Eliza," Janet replied, though I thought Michael was handling the staffing for that division. "Change of plans," I said simply. "I want to be more hands-on with this project." What I didn't say was that I had also spent the night reviewing every decision Michael had made in the past 6 months. I found questionable vendor contracts, irregular expense reports, and evidence that he had been systematically positioning himself to have more independent control over company operations. In the soft morning light, as Emma finally drifted to sleep against my shoulder, I made a decision. Michael had underestimated me once, assuming that new motherhood would distract me from his infidelity and his professional maneuvering. He wouldn't get the chance to underestimate me again. I kissed my daughter's downy head and whispered a promise. "Mommy's going to teach you an important lesson someday, about dignity and consequences, and the mistake of thinking that a woman in labor isn't still paying attention." The job postings went live that afternoon. By evening, applications were flowing in, and one name in particular caught my eye in the first batch of resumes: Vanessa Parker. I smiled, a real one this time, and closed my laptop. Phase 2 was officially underway. 5 weeks after Emma's birth, I returned to Meridian Technologies, earlier than anyone expected, including Michael. I didn't announce my arrival. Instead, I walked into the gleaming glass headquarters at 7:30 a.m., before most employees had arrived, with Emma and our nanny in tow. "A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off." "Mrs. Reynolds," our security guard Marcus said, surprise evident in his voice. "We weren't expecting you back so soon." "I decided maternity leave didn't suit me," I replied, adjusting to Emma's career. "Is the executive nursery ready?" Marcus nodded. During my pregnancy, I had converted an unused conference room adjacent to my office into a state-of-the-art nursery. Michael had called it excessive. "You'll want time at home with the baby," he'd insisted. Now I understand why. Perfect. And Marcus? Let's keep my arrival a surprise for Mr. Reynolds, shall we? The morning unfolded exactly as I had planned. I settled Emma with Diane, the experienced nanny I'd hired, and stepped into my office. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The awards lining the walls, the view of the city skyline, the desk where I had built Meridian from a promising startup into a tech powerhouse. I ran my fingers along the polished surface, reconnecting with the part of myself that existed beyond motherhood. At 9:15, I heard the familiar cadence of Michael's footsteps in the hallway. He always arrived at 9:10, stopped for coffee at the INCO Executive Lounge, and reached his office by 9:15. Today, however, he had a surprise waiting. "Good morning, Michael," I said, standing in his doorway. He froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. "Eliza? Why aren't you at home with Emma?" "Emma's here," I replied smoothly. "In the nursery, with Diane, her new nanny." "You hired a nanny without discussing it with me?" I tilted my head slightly. "Did you discuss Vanessa with me?" The coffee mug stopped entirely. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, denial, calculation, and finally, an attempt at damage control. "Vanessa? From marketing at Centauri Tech? She's just a professional contact. Is that what you call someone you've been having dinner with at Maison Azur while I was on bed rest?" I kept my voice level, almost conversational. "Or someone you've been visiting at the Westbrook Apartments when you claimed to be at client meetings?" Michael set down his mug carefully. "Eliza, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I interrupted. "But that's not why I'm here today. I'm here because we have a company to run, and I've been reviewing some interesting patterns in our operational decisions over the past few months." I placed a folder on his desk, printouts of questionable vendor contracts, irregular expense reports, and documentation of how he had been systematically positioning certain staff members loyal to him in key positions. "Would you like to explain these as well?" His face hardened. The pretense fell away. "You were supposed to be focused on the baby." "I can multitask," I replied. "It's why I built this company from nothing while you were still struggling through business school." Something ugly flashed across his face. "I made this company what it is. I brought in the connections, the investors, the big accounts. You certainly did," I acknowledged, "and I've always given you credit for that. Which makes me wonder why you felt the need to position yourself to take control while I was giving birth to our daughter." "You're becoming paranoid, Eliza. Motherhood is affecting your judgment." I almost laughed. It was so predictable. The immediate attempt to undermine my perception, to suggest that hormones were clouding my thinking. I'd seen male colleagues try the same tactic in boardrooms when they felt threatened by my competence. "Maybe," I said mildly. "Or maybe becoming a mother has clarified exactly what I'm willing to tolerate." I gathered the folder and turned to leave. "By the way, we're interviewing candidates for the new AI healthcare division next week. I'll be conducting the final interviews personally." His voice stopped me at the door. "I thought we agreed I would handle staffing for that division." "Plans change," I replied, not turning around. "Just like relationships." I spent the next week re-establishing my presence at Meridian. I held meetings with department heads, reviewed quarterly projections, and made it clear to everyone that my maternity leave had not diminished my leadership role. Michael maintained a careful distance, suddenly finding reasons to be out of the office for client meetings. I didn't mind. It gave me space to implement the next phase of my plan. On Thursday, I called Janet from HR into my office. "What's the status on the applications for the AI division?" "We've narrowed it down to the top candidates for each position," she reported. "The marketing director role has 3 strong finalists. I've scheduled interviews for Monday." "Send me the files," I requested. "I want to review them before the interviews." The files arrived in my inbox an hour later. I wasn't surprised to see Vanessa Parker among the finalists. Her resume was impressive. She had the qualifications and experience we were looking for. What Janet didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had already investigated Vanessa thoroughly. I had hired a private investigator the day after Emma's birth. The file he delivered revealed a pattern. Vanessa targeted men in positions of power, used those relationships to advance her career, then moved on to the next opportunity. Michael wasn't her first married executive, just her latest stepping stone. What interested me most was that beneath the manipulation, Vanessa actually possessed genuine talent. Her campaigns had increased market share for her previous employers. Her strategies were innovative. Had she simply relied on her abilities rather than her willingness to cross ethical lines, she might have advanced on merit alone. I closed her file and made my decision. Vanessa Parker would not be our new marketing director. I had something else in mind for her. Sunday night, I was reviewing presentation slides for Monday's board meeting when Michael finally returned from his weekend business trip. Emma was already asleep in her nursery at home, the monitor on my desk broadcasting her gentle breathing. "You're working late," Michael observed, hovering in my office doorway. "Board meeting tomorrow," I replied without looking up. "Quarterly review." He shifted uncomfortably. "I thought we agreed you'd take it easy for the first few months after Emma was born." "Did we? I don't recall." I finally looked up at him. "By the way, how's Vanessa?" His face betrayed him before he could control it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Interesting," I mused, "because according to your location history, you spent the weekend at the Grand Hotel in Napa, and according to her Instagram, so did she." I turned my laptop to show him the evidence, his credit card statement beside her social media posts. Timestamps aligned. "You've been spying on me?" His indignation would have been amusing if it weren't so pathetic. "Let's call it due diligence," I corrected. "The same kind I apply to any potential threat to my company." His expression shifted from defensive to calculating. "What do you want, Eliza? Money? A divorce? Name your price." I closed my laptop and stood. "What makes you think I want anything from you?" "Everyone wants something," he said, confidence returning to his voice. "And I know you. You won't risk a public scandal that could affect the company's stock price or Emma's future." I smiled then, the same smile I'd given him in the delivery room. "You're right about one thing, Michael. I won't risk anything that could harm Emma or Meridian. Which is why I've been so careful with how I've documented everything. Your affair, your financial manipulations, your attempts to undermine my position in my own company." I walked around the desk until we were face to face. "But you're wrong about something important. You don't know me. Not anymore. Because the woman who would have forgiven you, who would have tried to save our marriage at any cost, she died in that delivery room when you were texting your mistress instead of holding her hand." Fear flickered in his eyes. He had never seen this version of me before, cold, precise, untouchable. "Tomorrow is going to be an interesting day," I continued. "We have the board meeting at 10, and then at 2, I'm interviewing candidates for the new division, including Vanessa Parker." The color drained from his face. "What are you planning?" I patted his cheek gently. "You should get some rest. You look tired. All those late nights must be catching up with you." As I gathered my things to leave, Michael stood frozen, finally understanding what he should have known all along, that I had built Meridian Technologies from nothing, had navigated the cutthroat world of tech startups as a woman in a male-dominated industry. I hadn't succeeded by being soft. I had succeeded by being strategic, and he was about to learn exactly what that meant. The board meeting Monday morning was a masterclass in corporate theater. I arrived early, setting up the conference room exactly as I wanted it. Quarterly reports. At each seat, the latest prototype of our AI health monitoring system on display, and Emma's bassinet in the corner with Diane nearby. The message was clear. I was fully capable of managing both motherhood and my company. Michael arrived last, his usual confident stride replaced by a cautious gait. He faltered slightly upon seeing Emma in the room, then composed himself as bored. Members cooed over my daughter. "Eliza, how wonderful to see you back so soon." Victoria Chen, our lead investor, greeted me with a warm embrace. "And you've brought the little princess with you." "I believe in leading by example," I replied. "If Meridian is truly committed to supporting working parents, it starts at the top." Victoria beamed. She had been pushing for more family-friendly policies for years. Precisely what I've been saying. As everyone settled into their seats, I took my place at the head of the table, a position Michael had quietly assumed during my absence. His jaw clenched as he took a seat to my right. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank everyone for their patience during my brief absence. And I want to especially acknowledge Janet from HR for implementing our new parental support initiatives." I nodded toward Janet, who smiled proudly. "The executive nursery has made it possible for me to return to full capacity while staying connected to my daughter." I could feel Michael's discomfort beside me. The nursery had been my project, one he had actively discouraged. Now it is being celebrated as a progressive achievement by the entire board. Now let's discuss our quarterly performance. What followed was a detailed presentation of Meridian's financials, all prepared by me, all highlighting decisions I had made prior to my maternity leave. When we reached the sections involving operations that Michael had managed in my absence, I handled it with surgical precision. "You'll notice some irregular patterns in our vendor relationships during the last quarter," I said, displaying a chart that clearly showed the discrepancies without explicitly connecting them to Michael. "I've initiated a full audit to ensure we're optimizing our partnerships." Michael shifted in his seat. "Those vendor changes were necessary to accommodate production schedules," he interjected. "Perhaps," I conceded. "The audit will clarify that. Transparency is essential, especially with shareholder funds." By the meeting's end, the message was clear. I was firmly in control, aware of every aspect of my company, and addressing any irregularities. When the board members filed out, many stopped to admire Emma once more. Only Michael remained seated, his knuckles white as they gripped his portfolio. "That was quite a performance," he said after the room had cleared. "It wasn't a performance, Michael. It was leadership." I gathered Emma from Diane's arms. "Something you might have forgotten the meaning of." His eyes hardened. "You're making a mistake, turning this personal." "No. You made it personal when you decided to betray not just your wife, but your CEO. I cradled Emma against my shoulder. "The interview with Vanessa is at 2 p.m. You're welcome to observe, from the adjacent room, of course. And if I refuse, then you'll miss witnessing an important company decision." I turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, I've scheduled a meeting with our attorneys tomorrow morning to discuss options." His face paled. "Options?" "For the future of our personal and professional relationships," I clarified. "I believe in considering all possibilities before making strategic decisions." I left him there, staring after me, the pieces of his carefully constructed narrative crumbling around him. The hours before Vanessa's interview were spent reviewing our company's organizational structure. I had built Meridian with a clear vision, creating technology that improved lives while maintaining ethical standards that the tech industry often ignored. Over the years, we had grown from a small team working out of my garage to over 500 employees across 3 campuses. What troubled me now, reviewing department by department, was how Michael had subtly shifted certain operations during my pregnancy. Key projects had been reassigned, reporting structures altered, decision-making centralized under his direct reports. It wasn't obvious unless you knew what to look for: a department reorganization here, a staffing change there. But the pattern was clear. He had been quietly consolidating power. I made notes, mapping out the changes needed to restore proper oversight. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. It was about protecting everything I had built. At precisely 1:55 p.m., Janet knocked on my office door. Ms. Parker is here for her interview. I looked up from my desk where Emma slept peacefully in her carrier. Perfect. Show her to conference room B. I'll be there momentarily. Janet hesitated. Mr. Reynolds asked if he could sit in on the interview. He's welcome to observe from the viewing room, I replied. We had designed conference room B with an adjacent observation space for training purposes, with one-way glass between them. He seemed to think he should be part of the interview panel. Did he? How interesting. I stood, straightening my blazer. Please inform him that this is a preliminary interview to assess cultural fit for my direct team. If Ms. Parker progresses to the next round, he's welcome to participate then. Janet nodded and left to deliver the message. I checked my appearance in the small mirror behind my office door, applied a fresh coat of lipstick, and squared my shoulders. Then I leaned down to place a gentle kiss on Emma's forehead. Wish Mommy luck, little one. It's showtime. Vanessa. Parker was exactly as her photos suggested, polished, confident, with the kind of calculated beauty that spoke of careful investment. Her Prada suit was this season's cut, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive, her smile practiced to perfection. Ms. Parker, I extended my hand. Thank you for coming in today. I'm Eliza Reynolds, CEO of Meridian Technologies. If she was surprised to be interviewed by the CEO herself, she hit it well. The pleasure is mine, Ms. Reynolds. I've long admired your work in the tech sector, especially your focus on ethical AI development. She was good. Her research was thorough, her flattery specific enough to seem genuine. I gestured to the chair across from me. Please have a seat. I've reviewed your resume and I'm quite impressed with your background. Thank you, she replied, smoothing her skirt as she sat. I believe my experience at Centauri Tech has positioned me perfectly for this role. I nodded, setting her resume aside. Before we discuss specific qualifications, I'm curious about what drew you to Meridian. We're not as large as Centauri, though our growth has been substantial. It was a softball question, designed to make her comfortable. She launched into a well-rehearsed answer about Meridian's innovation culture and market position. As she spoke, I observed her closely. The way her eyes darted occasionally to the one-way glass, the slight tension in her shoulders despite her relaxed demeanor. She knew Michael might be watching. But did she know I knew? Your last 3 positions have all been at director level or higher, I noted when she finished. The role you're interviewing for today would be a lateral move at best. Why make that choice at this stage in your career? A flicker of something, defensiveness perhaps, crossed her features before her smile reasserted itself. I believe in following opportunities rather than titles. Meridian's new AI healthcare division represents the future of tech. I'd rather be part of building something groundbreaking than maintain the status quo elsewhere, even if it means a lateral move temporarily. Temporarily, I repeated. So you see this as a stepping stone? I see it as a foundation, she corrected smoothly. One that could lead to growth for both myself and Meridian. I smiled, allowing warmth to reach my eyes for the first time. Ambition is something I value greatly, Ms. Parker. I built this company on it. I leaned forward slightly. But I also built it on integrity. Her smile faltered almost imperceptibly. As have I. My references can attest to my professional ethics. I'm sure they can, I agreed. Though sometimes references only tell part of the story. For instance, they might not mention personal relationships that could create conflicts of interest. There it was. The slight widening of her eyes, the momentary freeze before she recovered. I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything, I replied mildly. I'm simply noting that at Meridian, we value transparency above all else. We believe that personal entanglements should never cloud professional judgment. Her gaze flicked toward the observation window again, more obviously this time. Was she looking for rescue? Reassurance? I continued before she could formulate a response. Your qualifications are impressive, Ms. Parker. But the marketing director role requires someone with a particular vision for our healthcare initiatives. After reviewing your portfolio, I believe your talents might be better suited to another position within Meridian. Confusion crossed her face. Another position? Yes. We have an opening in our market research division. Entry level, but with significant growth potential for someone willing to prove themselves through merit rather than connections. The implication hung in the air between us. Her cheeks flushed. I don't understand. My experience clearly qualifies me for the director position. Experience comes in many forms, I said, my tone gentle but firm. Some of it builds character, some merely resumes. I slid a different job description across the table. This position reports directly to me through a department head I personally selected. The salary is competitive for the level, though naturally less than a director. Role. The true value lies in the opportunity to build a career based on ability rather than influence. Vanessa stared at the paper, then back at me. The calculation was visible in her eyes, weighing options, considering implications. Did I know about Michael? Was this a test? A trap? An opportunity? Why would you offer me this? She finally asked, her carefully constructed facade cracking just enough to reveal genuine confusion. I stood, gathering my materials. Let's just say I believe in second chances, Ms. Parker. Fresh starts, the opportunity to redefine oneself through honest work rather than shortcuts. I extended my hand again. The choice is yours, of course. Janet has the paperwork if you're interested. We'd need your decision by Wednesday. She rose shakily, taking my hand on autopilot. Wednesday. Yes, I'll consider it. Excellent. Oh, and one more thing, I added as I reached the door. The position includes mentorship from a senior female executive. I've found that sometimes women in this industry need guidance on how to advance without compromising their integrity or interfering with other women's families. The color drained from her face. She knew that I knew. Have a lovely afternoon, Miss Parker, I said, closing the door behind me. Michael was waiting in my office when I returned, his face a storm of barely contained fury. What the hell was that? He demanded, pacing between my desk and the window. I closed the door quietly, mindful of Emma still sleeping in her carrier. That was an interview with a qualified candidate who wasn't quite right for the director position. I offered her an alternative that better suits her actual merits. You humiliated her, he hissed, keeping his voice low but intense. You offered the marketing director at a Fortune 500 company an entry-level position. Did I? I settled behind my desk calmly. How interesting that you know so much about her current role, especially since her resume lists her as a senior marketing manager, not a director. Michael froze mid-pace. I reviewed the applications just like you asked me to months ago. I opened my laptop, the picture of unconcern. The applications only arrived last week, while I was supposedly still on maternity leave. How proactive of you to review them already. His jaw worked as he struggled to backtrack. Janet must have mentioned it. Perhaps. I looked up from my screen. Or perhaps you have other sources of information about Ms. Parker. The silence stretched, between us, taut with unspoken accusations. Finally, Michael braced his hands on my desk, leaning forward. What are you doing, Eliza? Using company resources to fight a personal battle? That's an interesting perspective, I replied. I see it differently. I'm using my professional judgment to protect my company from individuals with questionable ethics, whether that's a candidate who advances through inappropriate relationships or an executive who abuses his position to facilitate them. His face flushed. You have no proof of anything inappropriate, don't I? I turned my monitor toward him, displaying a timeline I had compiled. Credit card charges, location data, hotel stays. all neatly aligned with his alleged business trips and Vanessa's social media activity. This is just what I found with basic research. Imagine what a forensic accountant might discover when reviewing your corporate expenses. Michael straightened, his expression shifting from anger to calculation. What do you want, Eliza? I've already told you, I don't want anything from you. Everyone wants something, he insisted. Money? Power? Revenge? Just tell me what it will take to end this, whatever this is. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt a strange sense of clarity. This man I had married, had built a life with, had never truly understood me. Even now, faced with the consequences of his actions, he couldn't conceive of motivation beyond transaction or vengeance. What I want, I said slowly, is for our daughter to grow up understanding that integrity matters. Those actions have consequences. That her mother is not someone who can be betrayed and disrespected without response. I gestured to the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. He didn't move. And what about Vanessa? Was publicly humiliating her part of your integrity lesson? I offered her a legitimate position based on her actual qualifications, not the inflated experience on her resume, I replied. The fact that you see that as humiliation rather than opportunity says more about your values than mine. She won't. Take it, he said with conviction. She has too much pride. Perhaps. I shrugged slightly. But pride doesn't pay bills or build careers. Ambition does, and Ms. Parker is nothing if not ambitious. This isn't over, Michael warned, finally moving toward the door. No, I agreed. But the dynamic has changed. Remember our meeting with the attorneys tomorrow, 9 a.m. After he left, I sat in silence, processing the confrontation. It had unfolded almost exactly as I had anticipated. Michael's anger, his attempts to intimidate, his assumption that everything could be negotiated. What I hadn't expected was how little I felt beyond a clinical awareness of having executed my plan successfully. The pain of his betrayal had been replaced by something cooler, more detached. I wasn't fighting for my marriage anymore. I was restructuring my life. My phone chimed with a message from Janet. Ms. Parker has requested the paperwork for the market research position. I smiled. Just as I had predicted. Vanessa's ambition wouldn't allow her to walk away from a foot in the icky door at Meridian, even if that door was much lower than she had anticipated. She was calculating, not emotional, a trait we actually shared. She would take the position, believing she could work her way up quickly, perhaps even use her connection with Michael to accelerate her ascent. What she didn't know was that I had already restructured the market research department to report through channels I directly controlled, staffed with people whose loyalty to me was absolute. Michael would have no influence there, no matter how hard he tried. My next meeting was with Thomas Nakamura, our chief financial officer and my longest-standing ally at Meridian. He had been with me from the beginning, before Michael joined the company, before our success attracted investors and attention. The audit results are concerning, Thomas said without preamble as he entered my office. Michael has been systematically redirecting resources to build his own power base within the company. I nodded, unsurprised. Show me. Thomas spread financial reports across my desk, pointing out patterns that would be invisible to anyone without intimate knowledge of our operations. Budget slightly altered, resources reallocated, reporting structures shifted. None of it is explicitly against policy, Thomas explained. But together, it creates a shadow structure, one that could potentially operate independently of your oversight if necessary, or one that could be spun off into a new venture, I suggested. Thomas's eyes widened. You think he was planning to leave and take part of the company with him? I think he was creating options, I replied. The same way he was creating options in his personal life. Thomas had been my friend long enough to read between the lines. Eliza, I'm so sorry. If I had realized sooner, you couldn't have known, I assured him. I didn't want to see it either, until I couldn't avoid it anymore. We spent the next hour developing a financial strategy to unwind Michael's machinations without disrupting ongoing operations. By the time Thomas left, we had a clear plan to reassert proper financial controls throughout the organization. My final meeting of the day was with our legal team to prepare for tomorrow's discussion with Michael. Caroline Wu, our chief counsel, arrived with a thick folder of documents. I've outlined 3 possible scenarios, she began, ranging from full separation, both personal and professional, to a more controlled transition that would preserve appearances while limiting his authority. I reviewed the options carefully. Each had merits and drawbacks. Full separation would be cleanest but potentially most disruptive to the company. A managed transition would maintain stability but require ongoing interaction with Michael. The middle option, separating our personal relationship while maintaining a professional one with strict limitations, seemed most practical in the short term. What about his stock options? I asked. Michael owned 15% of Meridian, granted over years of service. That's where it gets complicated, Caroline acknowledged. The vesting schedule gives us some leverage, but he could still potentially disrupt operations as a significant minority shareholder. Unless we had cause to terminate him, I noted, like misappropriation of company resources or violation of ethical standards. Caroline's expression turned somber. Do you have evidence? I'm gathering it, I replied, but I want to be prepared for every scenario tomorrow. By evening, the office had emptied except for my executive assistant, David, who appeared in my doorway with a cup of tea. You missed dinner, he said, placing the steaming cup on my desk. And Diane mentioned that Emma's been fed and is sleeping in the nursery. I glanced at the clock, surprised to see it was past 8. Thank you, David. Have you been here this whole time? He shrugged. Someone has to keep an eye on things while you're restructuring the company and handling a personal crisis simultaneously. I smiled gratefully. David had been with me for 5 years and knew me better than most. Is it that obvious? Only to those of us who pay attention, he replied. For what it's worth, the staff is behind you. Word travels fast about the executive nursery and your commitment to being present despite having a newborn. People respect that. And the other situation? I asked carefully. David's expression remained neutral. People have suspected for months. The late nights, the weekend emergencies, the sudden interest in the Centauri Tech partnership. He hesitated. I should have said something sooner. No, I shook my head. You shouldn't have had to. But I appreciate your loyalty. It's not just loyalty, he corrected. It's respect. You built something important here, something worth protecting. After he left, I sat with my tea, watching the city lights flicker on across the skyline. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and decisions. Michael would fight. His pride demanded it. But he had underestimated me at every turn, and tomorrow would be no different. My phone chimed with an email notification. Vanessa Parker had officially accepted the market research position starting next Monday. I forwarded the confirmation to Janet with instructions to place Vanessa on my special projects team, a group that would report directly to me through a senior manager I trusted implicitly. The pieces were aligning perfectly. But the true test would come tomorrow, when Michael realized that his professional future was as compromised as our marriage. I gathered Emma from the nursery, cradling her sleeping form against my chest as I prepared to leave for the night. Your Daddy made a serious miscalculation, little one, I whispered. He forgot that I built this company before he arrived, and I can rebuild it without him if necessary. The next morning it dawned clear and bright. I arrived at the office early, settling Emma with Diane before reviewing my notes one final time. The meeting with Michael and our attorneys was scheduled for 9, but I had one important call to make first. Victoria Chen answered on the second ring. Eliza, good morning. How's our littlest board member doing today? Growing stronger every Day, I replied. Victoria. I need to discuss something sensitive before it potentially becomes a board matter. Her tone turned serious immediately. I'm listening. I outlined the situation in clinical terms. Michael's professional manipulations, the financial, audit findings, the potential impact on company stability. I deliberately left out the personal aspects. Those weren't relevant to the business discussion. I see, Victoria said when I finished. And you believe this requires board intervention? I'm hoping to resolve it privately, I explained. But I want you to be prepared if that proves impossible. The board has always trusted your judgment, Eliza, she assured me. Your creation of Meridian from nothing demonstrates your capability better than any words could. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. The call ended just as my assistant announced that Michael and the attorneys had arrived. I straightened my shoulders, checked on Emma one final time, and walked into the conference room to determine the future of both my company and my marriage. The conference room felt smaller than usual, crowded with attorneys on both sides. Michael had brought Alan Richter, a corporate lawyer with a reputation for aggressive tactics in executive separations. I had Caroline and her team from Meridian's legal department, plus Stanley Green, my personal attorney who had helped draft our prenuptial agreement 7 years earlier. Thank you all for coming, I began, taking my seat at the head of the table. I've asked for this meeting to discuss the path forward for both Meridian Technologies and my personal relationship with Michael. Michael leaned back in his chair, a posture I recognized as artificial confidence. Before we begin, I'd like to state for the record that I believe this entire situation has been manufactured to create leverage in what should be a personal matter. Smiled politely. Noted. However, this ceased to be merely a personal matter when company resources became involved. Alan Richter cleared his throat. My client is prepared to discuss an equitable separation of marital assets, but maintains that his position at Meridian is a separate issue entirely. I would agree, I replied, if the two hadn't become intertwined through his actions. Stanley slid a sealed folder across the table. This is a proposed settlement agreement, covering both personal and professional separation terms. We believe it's generous given the circumstances. Michael made no move to touch the folder. What circumstances would those be? I nodded to Caroline, who opened her laptop and turned the screen toward the group. We've completed a preliminary audit of executive activities over the past 8 months. The findings are concerning. What followed was a methodical presentation of Michael's professional manipulations, the altered reporting structures, the redirected resources, the strategic positioning of personnel loyal to him in key roles. Caroline presented each finding dispassionately, with supporting documentation highlighted on screen. These organizational changes, she noted, while individually within an executive's discretion, create a pattern that appears designed to establish autonomous control over significant company operations. Michael's attorney leaned close to whisper in his ear, but Michael waved him off. Reorganization for efficiency is part of my job, he stated flatly. There's nothing improper here. Perhaps not when viewed in isolation, I conceded. But context matters. I signaled to David, who entered with another folder. This one contained printouts of Michael's calendar entries, email exchanges with Vanessa Parker, and expense reports for dinners and hotel stays that coincided with their meetings. What we have here, I explained, is evidence of an improper relationship with a professional contact that has now compromised our hiring processes. Ms. Parker's application for a director-level position was fast-tracked outside normal protocols, with qualifications that appear to have been misrepresented. Michael's face reddened. My personal life has no bearing on company operations. It does when company funds are used to conduct an affair, Caroline interjected, flipping to a highlighted expense report. These charges for the Grand Hotel in Napa were submitted as a client meeting expense, yet no client was present. Alan Richter attempted to regain control. These allegations, even if true, hardly constitute grounds for professional separation. Mr. Reynolds has been instrumental in Meridian's growth. His equity stake and contractual protections reflect that contribution. Indeed, Stanley replied, smoothly. However, Section 7.3 of the Executive Employment Agreement specifically addresses misuse of company resources and ethical violations. The evidence suggests both have occurred. The discussion continued for nearly 2 hours, a calculated exchange of accusations and defenses. Throughout it all, I remained calm, letting the attorneys handle the procedural aspects while I observed Michael's reactions. His confidence had faltered, replaced by a growing realization that I had been gathering evidence far longer than he'd suspected. Let's be practical, I finally said, breaking a tense silence. This can proceed one of two ways. We can enter a protracted legal battle that will become public, damaging Meridian's reputation and value, including the value of your shares, Michael. Or we can reach a private agreement that allows everyone to move forward with dignity, Michael. Studied me across the table. And what would this private agreement entail? Full personal separation, I answered without hesitation. The prenuptial terms would apply, with some allowances for Emma's care. Professionally, you would transition from COO to a strategic advisor role with a 2-year contract. Your equity would vest according to the original schedule, but voting rights would be placed in a trust controlled by an independent third party. His eyes narrowed. You're pushing me out of my own company. Our company, I corrected gently. And no, I'm offering you a path that preserves your financial stake without allowing further disruption to operations. Alan leaned toward Michael, whispering urgently. Michael brushed him off again, his pride overriding legal counsel. And if I refuse? I had anticipated this question. Then we proceed to a full board review of the audit findings, followed by whatever actions they deem appropriate. Given Victoria Chen's concerns about governance, I let the implication hang in the air. You've spoken to Victoria? The shock in his voice was evident. I've kept our major investors informed of potential governance issues, as is my fiduciary duty, I replied. The specifics remain confidential pending this discussion. It was the leverage I needed. Michael knew Victoria controlled enough votes on the board to remove him entirely if she sided with me. The fight seemed to drain out of him as he realized how thoroughly I had outmaneuvered him. I want to see my daughter regularly, he said after a long pause. Of course. Emma needs her father. This was the one area where I had always intended to be generous. Despite everything, I wouldn't use our child as a weapon. The attorneys took over, hammering out details that would ultimately be formalized in a comprehensive agreement. By the time we adjourned for lunch, the framework was in place. Michael would step back from operations while maintaining his financial stake. Our marriage would end with minimal public drama, and a co-parenting schedule would ensure Emma had both parents in her life. As the others filed out, Michael lingered. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? I considered denying it, but opted for the truth. I've been prepared for contingencies since I noticed the first discrepancies in our operations reports. The personal betrayal simply accelerated the timeline. You never needed me, he said, a statement rather than a question. I wanted our partnership, Michael. There's a difference. I gathered my materials. But you're right about one thing. I never needed you. I chose you. And then you made choices that forced me to choose myself and our daughter instead. His expression hardened again. What about Vanessa? Was hiring her some kind of twisted revenge? Not at all, I replied honestly. Ms. Parker has genuine talent, beneath her questionable ethics. The entry-level position gives her an opportunity to build a career based on merit rather than manipulation. Whether she takes advantage of that opportunity is entirely up to her. She thinks you don't know about us, he said. That this is just a professional opportunity. I raised an eyebrow. You haven't told her? He looked away. I told her to take the job, that it was a foot in the door. Fascinating, I murmured. So you're still manipulating her, even now? His silence was answer enough. I walked to the door, then paused. The transition announcement will go out tomorrow morning. I suggest you use today to prepare your team. Back in my office, I found Emma awake and alert in Diane's arms. I took my daughter, breathing in her sweet baby scent as I settled into my chair. That went better than expected, I told Diane. The hard part is done. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. The legal framework was in place, but implementing the changes throughout the organization would take time. And I still had one more piece to place on the board: Vanessa Parker's introduction to Meridian. I spent the afternoon in back-to-back meetings, reassuring department heads about the upcoming transition and outlining my vision for Meridian's future. News of the impending leadership change had already begun circulating, despite our efforts to keep it confidential until the formal announcement. People are concerned, Thomas reported during our check-in. Michael's allies are particularly nervous about their positions. Reassure them, I instructed. This isn't a purge. We need stability now more than ever. Anyone who commits to Meridian's vision and ethics has nothing to fear. By evening, the transition plan was solidified. Michael would announce his move to an advisory role the next morning, framing it as a personal choice to pursue other interests while maintaining his investment in Meridian. I would assume direct oversight of operations until a new COO could be selected, likely promoting from within to minimize disruption. As I prepared to leave, David appeared in my doorway with a last-minute update. Ms. Parker called to confirm her start date on Monday. She asked specifically about reporting structure and whether she would have any interaction with Mr. Reynolds. Interesting, I mused. Tell her the organizational chart is being updated due to some transitions, and that she'll receive full details during orientation. David nodded. Also, there's been unusual activity on our secure servers. Several confidential files were accessed using Michael's credentials this afternoon after the meeting. My pulse quickened. What files? Mostly financial projections for the new AI division, plus some proprietary research documents. I frowned. Michael was making a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the situation, either intelligence to take elsewhere or leverage to improve his position. Revoke his access immediately and initiate a security protocol. I want to know exactly what was accessed and whether any copies were made. David moved swiftly to execute my instructions, leaving me alone with Emma, who had fallen asleep in her carrier. I studied my daughter's peaceful face, so trusting and innocent. Everything I had done, the careful planning, the strategic maneuvering, even the calculated offer to Vanessa, had been to protect what mattered most: Emma's future and the company. I had built from nothing. My phone chimed with a message from Caroline. Final agreement drafted. We'll deliver the signatures tomorrow morning. I replied with a simple acknowledgement, then turned back to the window. The city was transitioning from day to night, office lights blinking on as the sun dipped below the horizon. Similarly, Meridian was entering a transition period, one that would require vigilance and decisive leadership. Tomorrow would bring the formal beginning of a new chapter, both personally and professionally. Michael would adjust to his diminished role, the company would adapt to the restructured leadership, and Vanessa Parker would step into a position she never expected, one that would test whether she truly had the talent I suspected beneath her. Ethical lapses. As for me, I was already looking ahead to Meridian's expansion, to Emma's future, to the possibilities that opened up when you refused to be defined by someone else's betrayal. In the reflection of the window glass, I caught sight of my own image, a woman holding her sleeping child while overlooking the city she had helped shape. Not broken, not defeated, but transformed. Stronger, more determined than ever. This wasn't the ending I had anticipated when I married Michael 7 years ago. But perhaps it wasn't an ending at all, just a course correction on a journey I had always been meant to navigate on my own terms. The morning of the announcement dawned with unusual clarity. I arrived at the office before anyone else, taking time to prepare both physically and mentally for the day ahead. Emma slept peacefully in her carrier as I reviewed the official statements one last time. Michael's transition to an advisory role, my resumption of direct operational oversight, the company's unwavering commitment to our strategic vision. "Everything is set for the all-hands meeting at 10, David confirmed, arriving with my usual morning coffee. "The board members have been briefed individually, and Michael has agreed to follow the approved script." I nodded, appreciating David's efficiency. "And security? Michael's access has been restricted to specific areas and systems, as outlined in the agreement. The IT team finished the changes at midnight." "Excellent. And the server access from yesterday?" David's expression tightened. "Slightly. The security logs show multiple downloads of proprietary research, primarily related to the healthcare AI algorithms. We've initiated tracking protocols on the files. If they appear anywhere outside our secure network, we'll know immediately." I frowned. Michael was clearly preparing a contingency plan, despite our agreement. It was predictable, but disappointing. Double the security team monitoring external communications, and flag any unusual patterns in our competitor networks. By 9, the executive floor was buzzing with anticipation. Everyone sensed significant news was coming, though the details had been kept tightly controlled. Michael arrived precisely at 9:15, dressed impeccably in the charcoal suit I had once complimented as his most authoritative look. His eyes met mine briefly as he passed my office. No warmth, no regret, just a calculating assessment. At 9:30, Victoria Chen arrived with 2 other board members. "Quite the morning." "You have planned," she remarked as she joined me for a brief pre-meeting review. "How are you holding up?" "I'm focused on the company's stability," I replied, deliberately sidestepping the personal element. "The transition plan is sound. We'll experience minimal disruption." Victoria studied me carefully. "And the other matter? The server access?" "News." Traveled quickly in our circles. "Contained and monitored. I anticipated attempted data extraction." She nodded approvingly. "You always were 3 steps ahead. It's why I invested in Meridian in the first place." She glanced toward the conference room where Michael was speaking with Alan Richter. "Not everyone appreciates that quality in a woman. Their loss." At precisely 10, we gathered in the company auditorium. All 500 local employees filled the seats, with remote teams joining via video conference. The atmosphere was tense with speculation. I took the stage first, Emma's carrier discreetly placed beside the podium. "Good morning, Meridian," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Today marks an important evolution in our company's journey. As many of you know, balancing innovation with stability has always been our strength. That balance sometimes requires adjustments in how we structure our leadership." I outlined Meridian's growth trajectory, our upcoming initiatives, and the expanding opportunities in the healthcare AI sector. Then I introduced the leadership changes, Michael's transition to a strategic advisory role, and my resumption of direct operational oversight. These changes, I emphasized, represent our commitment to focused innovation and ethical leadership as we enter our next growth phase. When Michael joined me on stage, he played his part flawlessly, expressing enthusiasm for his new advisory, capacity and confidence in Meridian's future under my continued leadership. If anyone detected the tension beneath our professional veneer, they gave no indication. What followed was a carefully orchestrated day of stakeholder management. Together with Michael, I met with key clients, reassuring them of continuity in their projects. We spoke with major investors, presenting a united front while detailing the strategic benefits of our restructured leadership. We addressed department heads, outlining the practical implications of the transition. Throughout it all, Michael maintained the script, presenting the narrative we had crafted, that this was a mutual decision aimed at optimizing company performance, while allowing him to explore new ventures. Only those closest to us could sense the carefully controlled hostility beneath his polished exterior. By late afternoon, the formal aspects of the transition were complete. Michael cleared personal items from the COO office, leaving behind company materials as specified in our agreement. His last act was a company-wide email thanking the team for their support and expressing pride in Meridian's accomplishments. "Quite the performance," Thomas commented after Michael departed. He almost seemed sincere. "He is sincere about one thing," I replied. "He believes this is temporary, that he'll find a way to regain control or extract value beyond our agreement." "The server access?" I nodded. "He's preparing for his next move, whatever that might be." "What do you think he's planning?" Thomas asked. "Most likely he'll approach competitors with our research," I speculated, "or attempt to launch a rival product with a new venture. Either way, we're prepared." What Michael didn't know was that I had anticipated this scenario months ago, when I first noticed irregularities in our operations reports. The proprietary algorithms he had downloaded contained embedded tracking markers, digital fingerprints, that would immediately identify any unauthorized use or adaptation. More importantly, I had already activated my professional network, connections I had cultivated throughout my career, many of whom owed me favors or respected my business acumen enough to heed my warnings. That evening, I hosted an intimate dinner at my penthouse for 6 key industry leaders, CEOs and innovation directors from companies that might be approached by Michael in the coming weeks. Emma slept peacefully in her nursery while we discussed healthcare technology trends over perfectly seared scallops and vintage wine. "I appreciate the insights on regulatory challenges in the AI healthcare space," remarked Connor Williams, CEO of BioSync Technologies, "particularly the potential pitfalls in algorithm validation." "Always happy to share perspectives," I replied smoothly. "We're all navigating similar waters, which reminds me, I should mention that Meridian recently experienced a minor security incident involving our proprietary research." The table's attention sharpened instantly. "Nothing compromised," I assured them. "But it's a reminder that intellectual property requires vigilant protection, especially when leadership changes create opportunities for misunderstanding." Sophia Mendez, Innovation Director at Global Health Systems, set down her wine glass. "This wouldn't happen to relate to Michael's sudden transition to an advisory role, would it?" I met her gaze evenly. "I can only say that we're monitoring the situation carefully. Our research is uniquely identifiable, should it appear in unauthorized contexts." The message was received without explicit accusation, a warning delivered through subtle implication. By dessert, the conversation had moved to other topics, but the seed had been planted. If Michael approached any of these companies with technology suspiciously similar to Meridian's work, they would recognize the risk immediately. After my guests departed, I checked on Emma, then poured myself a small glass of bourbon, a celebration ritual from my early startup days. The first phase of my response to Michael's betrayal was complete. The professional separation had been executed with minimal disruption. The personal divorce proceedings would follow the framework established in our agreement. And my network had been subtly activated to contain potential damage from whatever Michael might attempt next. My phone chimed with a message from Victoria. "Masterful handling today. The board is confident in your leadership. Dinner soon to discuss expansion funding?" I smiled, sending a quick affirmative response. Victoria had been more than an investor. She had been a mentor who recognized my potential when many dismissed me as too young, too female, or too idealistic to succeed in the cutthroat tech world. Her continued support was another asset Michael had underestimated. A second message arrived from David. Security flagged unusual email activity from M's personal account. Multiple exchanges with Centauri Tech executives. Centauri, Vanessa's former employer and one of our main competitors. It was a predictable move, though sooner than I had anticipated. I typed a quick response. Monitor, but don't intervene. Forward details to legal team. Let Michael believe he was operating undetected. Every step he took outside our agreement only strengthened my position if we needed to enforce the non-compete and confidentiality clauses he had signed years ago. Thorough. Final message of the night came from Janet in HR. Confirmed Vanessa Parker starts Monday. Orientation scheduled for 9 a.m. You requested notification. Monday would bring the next phase of my plan, Vanessa's introduction to Meridian under my direct supervision. I had designed her role carefully, placing her in a position where her talents could benefit the company while ensuring she understood exactly who held power in this new dynamic. Some might view my decision to hire my husband's mistress as a form of twisted revenge. They would be wrong. Business decisions driven by emotion rarely succeeded. No, bringing Vanessa into Meridian was strategic, a way to contain a potential external threat while potentially gaining value from her undeniable marketing talent. If she proved capable of learning and growth, separating her professional contributions from her personal choices, she might actually build a legitimate career at Meridian. If not, she would fail on her own merits, with no one to blame but herself. Sunday evening, I received an unexpected call from Michael. There's a problem with the final agreement, he began without preamble. Oh? I kept my tone neutral. Caroline? Hasn't mentioned any issues. The non-compete radius is unreasonable, he stated. 50 miles effectively locks me out of the entire tech corridor. That's the standard radius in executive agreements, I reminded him. The same one you signed. Originally. Things have changed, he insisted. I'm requesting a modification to 25 miles, with exceptions for advisory roles. I considered his request, analyzing the potential implications. Advisory roles with direct competitors would still be prohibited, regardless of geography. Of course, he agreed too quickly. This is about flexibility for genuine advisory work. I recognized the strategy. He was attempting to create a loophole that would allow him to work with Centauri Tech while technically honoring our agreement. The question was whether to confront him now or allow him to believe he had secured an advantage. I'll have Caroline draft an amendment, I decided. But any advisory role would require disclosure and board approval to ensure no conflicts of interest. He hesitated, clearly weighing whether to push further. Fine. When can I expect the revised document? Tomorrow afternoon, I replied. We can sign it then, if you're satisfied with the language. After we disconnected, I messaged Caroline with specific instructions for drafting the amendment. The modified non-compete would appear to give Michael the flexibility he sought while adding disclosure requirements that would effectively prevent him from working with our direct competitors without explicit approval. It was a calculated concession, allowing him to believe he had gained something while actually reinforcing the restrictions in a less obvious way. The amended agreement would also include enhanced consequences for any breach of confidentiality or misuse of proprietary information, tied directly to his remaining equity stake. Monday morning arrived with a sense of anticipation. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit that projected authority without intimidation, arranged for Emma to spend the day with Diane in the executive nursery, and arrived at the office precisely at 8, early enough to prepare for both the executive team meeting and Vanessa's orientation. Ms. Parker arrived early, David informed me as I settled at my desk. She's waiting in the main reception area. HR is scheduled to begin her onboarding at 9. I nodded, reviewing the orientation schedule I had personally modified. Perfect. Have Janet bring her to my office at 11, after the initial processing is complete. David hesitated. Michael will be here at 11 to sign the amended agreement. Even better, I replied, allowing myself a small smile. Schedule them 5 minutes apart. Ms. Parker first, then Michael. David's eyes widened slightly as he understood the implications, but he simply nodded and left to make the arrangements. Some might call it petty to orchestrate a meeting between Michael and his mistress in my office, the first time they would see each other since the transition. I saw it differently. It was an opportunity to establish clarity for all parties involved, to demonstrate that in the new reality we were creating, I controlled the narrative, the environment, and the outcomes. By 11 o'clock, Vanessa Parker would understand exactly what role she would play at Meridian Technologies. And Michael would witness firsthand the consequences of underestimating the woman he had betrayed. At precisely 10:55, I received a text from Janet in HR. Ms. Parker's processing complete, heading to your office now. I straightened the documents on my desk, closed my laptop, and adjusted Emma's carrier beside me. I had deliberately brought my daughter to the office today, a strategic choice that established the personal context for this professional interaction. A soft knock announced their arrival. Ms. Reynolds, Vanessa Parker is here for her orientation. Meeting, Janet called through the door. Please come in, I responded, rising from my chair. Vanessa entered with the confident stride of someone accustomed to making impressions. Her navy suit was perfectly tailored, her makeup flawless, her smile practiced to the precise balance of respect and self-assurance. Only the slight tension around her eyes betrayed any nervousness. Ms. Parker, welcome to Meridian Technologies. I extended my hand, maintaining direct eye contact. I trust your onboarding process has been smooth so far? Absolutely, she replied, her handshake firm but not aggressive. Everyone has been incredibly welcoming. Janet hovered at the door. Shall I stay for the orientation overview? That won't be necessary, I smiled. I'll handle Ms. Parker's department-specific orientation personally. Thank you, Janet. As Janet departed, I gestured for Vanessa to take a seat. Before we discuss your role in the market research division, I want to ensure you understand Meridian's company culture and expectations. Of course, she nodded eagerly. I've researched Meridian extensively. Your commitment to ethical innovation is impressive. Ethics are indeed fundamental to our success, I agreed, letting my gaze rest momentarily on Emma. Both professionally and personally. Something flickered across Vanessa's face, a momentary uncertainty as she registered the presence of my infant daughter. Your baby is beautiful, she offered. How old? Just over 2 months, I replied. Emma was born on March 15th, a date I'm sure you recall, since you were texting my husband while I was in labor. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Her carefully constructed professional demeanor cracked, revealing genuine shock. I don't, please. I raised a hand to stop her stammering. Let's not insult each other's intelligence. I know about your relationship with Michael. I know about the dinners, the hotel stays, the plans you discussed for after he sold his stake. In Meridian. Her eyes darted to the door, calculating escape routes. Ms. Reynolds, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, I interrupted calmly. What there is, however, is an opportunity, one that benefits us both if you're intelligent enough to recognize it. Confusion replaced panic in her expression. Opportunity? Yes. Despite your questionable personal choices, your professional qualifications are impressive. Your marketing strategies at Centauri showed genuine innovation. Your consumer behavior analyses demonstrated real insight. She blinked rapidly, struggling to process this unexpected direction. You reviewed my work? Thoroughly, I confirmed. Just as I reviewed your pattern of leveraging personal relationships for professional advancement at your previous 3 companies. Her shoulders stiffened. That's not fair. Fair? I raised an eyebrow. Is it fair to pursue a married executive while his wife is pregnant? Is it fair to discuss company acquisition strategies with someone else's husband? Let's not speak of fairness, Ms. Parker. The intercom on my desk buzzed. David's voice came through clearly. Ms. Reynolds, Mr. Reynolds has arrived for his 11 o'clock appointment. Perfect timing. Please have him wait for 3 minutes, then show him in. Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized what was about to happen. He's coming here? Now? Indeed. I leaned forward slightly. Which brings us to an important decision point for you. In approximately 2 minutes, Michael will walk through that door. He believes you accepted this position without knowing that I'm aware of your relationship. He's been manipulating you, just as he tried to manipulate me. Her expression shifted as this reality sank in. He told me you had no idea about us, that you were too preoccupied with the baby to notice anything. A significant miscalculation on his part, I observed. Now, you have a choice. You can either continue on the path you've been following, using relationships rather than talent to advance, or you can seize this opportunity to prove your actual abilities in a role where only merit will matter. Why would you even offer me a job knowing what you know? She asked, genuine confusion in her voice. Because I recognize potential, I replied honestly, and because talented people sometimes make poor personal choices. The question is whether you can separate the two moving forward. Another buzz from the intercom. Mr. Reynolds is becoming impatient, David reported with just a hint of satisfaction. In his tone. Send him in, I instructed. Vanessa straightened in her chair, her mind clearly racing through options. I watched her analyze and discard various approaches in real time: denial, confrontation, retreat. Finally, her expression settled into something I recognized from my own mirror: strategic calculation. The door opened. Michael stepped in with the casual confidence of someone who believed he held leverage in an upcoming negotiation. That confidence evaporated instantly when he saw Vanessa seated across from me. What is this? He demanded, frozen in the doorway. Michael, I greeted him calmly. You remember Ms. Parker, our new market research analyst? She's just completing her orientation. His gaze darted between us, attempting to assess how much had been revealed. This is inappropriate, Eliza. Using company processes for personal vendettas. On the contrary, I replied. Nothing about Ms. Parker's hiring has been personal. Her qualifications align perfectly with our needs in the market research division. The fact that you two are acquainted is incidental. Vanessa remained silent, watching our exchange with analytical intensity. I could almost see her reassessing everything: her relationship with Michael, her career path, her current predicament. Ms. Parker, I turned back to her. You were about to share your decision regarding the opportunity we discussed. She glanced briefly at Michael, then back to me. In that moment, something shifted in her demeanor. A recognition, perhaps, of which path offered genuine advancement versus temporary advantage. I accept the position as offered, she stated firmly, and I appreciate the chance to prove my capabilities based solely on professional merit. Michael's face contorted with disbelief. Vanessa, you can't seriously— Actually, Michael, she cut him off. I can, and I should have from the beginning of my career. She stood, smoothing her skirt with steady hands. Ms. Reynolds, thank you for your candor. I won't disappoint you professionally. I hope not, I replied. David will show you to your department. Your team lead, Marcus Chen, is expecting you. As Vanessa exited, the stunned silence from Michael was more satisfying than any verbal victory could have been. Once the door closed behind her, he found his voice. Was that really necessary? Humiliating. Both of us like that? Clarity is necessary, I corrected him. Ms. Parker now understands exactly where she stands and what opportunities are genuinely available to her. As do you. I gestured to the chair Vanessa had vacated. Now, shall we discuss the amendments to our agreement? I believe you requested modifications to the non-compete clause. The meeting that followed was brief and surprisingly anticlimactic. Michael signed the revised agreement with minimal argument, his earlier confidence replaced by wary recognition that his planned maneuvers had been anticipated and countered. When he left my office 30 minutes later, the shift in power dynamics was complete. I spent the remainder of the day systematically implementing digital safeguards throughout Meridian's systems. With Thomas and our cybersecurity team, I initiated protocols that would track any unusual data access patterns, monitor external communications with competitors, and protect our intellectual property across all platforms. The tracking markers have been embedded in all files Michael downloaded, confirmed Alex Zhang, our head of cybersecurity. If any portion of our proprietary algorithms appears in another company's technology, we'll have irrefutable evidence of the source. What about our cloud infrastructure? I asked, reviewing the security dashboard on my screen. We've implemented containerized security protocols, Alex explained. Even authorized users can only access specific segments related to their direct responsibilities. No one except you and Thomas can view the entire architecture. By late afternoon, Meridian's digital fortress was secure. Every potential vulnerability Michael might exploit had been identified and fortified. Our proprietary research, the lifeblood of our competitive advantage, was protected by layers of security and digital forensics that would immediately alert us to any unauthorized use. It's the most comprehensive security implementation I've seen outside of government defense systems, Thomas remarked as we reviewed the final protocols. Michael would need a team of elite hackers to penetrate it. He won't try direct penetration, I predicted. He'll look for human vulnerabilities, employees with access who might be persuaded or manipulated. We've thought of that too, Thomas assured me. Access permissions now require dual authentication for sensitive areas. Even if someone wanted to help him, they couldn't do it alone. I nodded, satisfied with our preparations. Implement the human resources protocol as well. I want weekly one-on-ones with any staff members who had close relationships with Michael. These weren't just security precautions. They were strategic moves in a complex game Michael had initiated but no longer controlled. Each safeguard was designed not only to protect Meridian, but to communicate a clear message. Every contingency had been anticipated, every angle considered, every potential vulnerability addressed. As evening approached, David appeared with a preliminary report on Vanessa's first day. Ms. Parker has integrated well with the market research team. Marcus reports she's shown impressive analytical skills and has already identified potential improvements in our consumer behavior tracking. Interesting, I mused. Keep me updated on her progress. I want weekly assessments for the first month. And Michael? David inquired carefully. He's cleared out his office as agreed. IT confirms he turned in all company devices. His system access has been restricted to advisory-level permissions only. I nodded, unsurprised by Michael's compliance. The amended agreement had effectively closed his planned loopholes while appearing to grant his requests. He would need time to reassess his strategy. That evening, as I prepared to leave with Emma, my phone chimed with a notification from our security system. Michael had attempted to access research files using an old administrative password, one that would have bypassed standard security protocols if we hadn't updated our systems. The honeypot worked, Alex confirmed when I called him. He took the bait exactly as you predicted. The fake files have been tagged with unique identifiers. If they show up anywhere, we'll know immediately. I smiled, cradling Emma against my shoulder as I gathered my things. The honeypot, a security technique where intentionally vulnerable systems contain trackable decoy information, had been my idea. Michael's predictability made him vulnerable in ways he couldn't comprehend. As Emma and I rode the elevator down to the parking garage, I reflected on the day's events. The confrontation with Vanessa had established clear boundaries. The security implementations had protected Meridian's intellectual property. The amended agreement had reinforced Michael's restrictions while giving him the illusion of flexibility. Most importantly, I had demonstrated to everyone involved, Michael, Vanessa, the executive team, and myself, that betrayal had consequences. But those consequences could be strategic rather than emotional. The digital safeguards weren't just protecting code and algorithms. They were protecting the future I was building for Emma and myself. My phone chimed again as we reached my car, a message from Victoria Chen. Market responding positively to transition announcement. Stock up 3% today. Board pleased with smooth handling. Dinner Thursday to discuss expansion funding? I smiled, sending a quick affirmative response. The professional components of my plan were unfolding perfectly. The personal aspects would take longer to resolve, but I had laid the groundwork for a future defined by my choices rather than Michael's betrayal. As I secured Emma in her car seat, I caught sight of my reflection in the window, composed, focused, unbowed. The woman who had discovered her husband's infidelity during labor had transformed that pain into purpose, that betrayal into strategy. The digital fortress I had built around Meridian was more than corporate security. It was a statement about resilience and foresight. In the information age, power belonged to those who controlled the data, who anticipated vulnerabilities, who designed systems to protect what mattered most. Michael had always underestimated my technical expertise, viewing it as secondary to his business connections and charisma. That miscalculation was now at the heart of his diminished position. Every digital defense I had implemented was a reminder that in modern business, technology wasn't just a tool. It was the architecture of power itself. 3 weeks after Michael's transition to an advisory role, I received the call I had been anticipating from Connor Williams, CEO of BioSync Technologies. "Eliza, do you have a moment to discuss something sensitive?" His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone navigating potentially treacherous waters. "Of course, Connor," I replied, stepping away from the executive team meeting I had been leading. "Give me just a moment to reach my office." Once behind closed doors, I continued. "I assume this concerns Michael?" A pause, then. "Yes. He approached us yesterday with a proposal for a healthcare AI consultation contract. The presentation materials contained algorithmic structures that seemed familiar." "I appreciate the heads up," I said, keeping my tone professional despite the satisfaction I felt. "As I mentioned during our dinner, Meridian's proprietary technology contains unique identifiers. If you could forward me the materials Michael shared, our legal team can verify whether our intellectual property has been compromised." "Already sent to your secure server," Connor confirmed. "Eliza, I want to be clear. BioSync values our relationship with Meridian. We have no intention of pursuing technology that might infringe on your patents or trade secrets. Your integrity is why we've always considered BioSync a trusted partner rather than merely a competitor," I assured him. "This kind of professional courtesy strengthens the entire industry." After we disconnected, I accessed the secure server and downloaded the presentation materials Connor had forwarded. The documents were carefully crafted to appear original, reformatted, reworded, with superficial modifications to the workflow diagrams. But beneath the cosmetic changes, the core architecture was unmistakably Meridian's proprietary healthcare AI framework. More damning were the embedded trackers, digital fingerprints our security team had planted in the honeypot files Michael had accessed. The documents he'd presented to BioSync contained 3 distinct tracker signatures, creating an irrefutable chain of evidence linking the material directly to his unauthorized downloads. I immediately convened a meeting with Caroline and our legal team, sharing the evidence and outlining our response options. "This is a clear violation of both his employment agreement and the separation terms," Caroline confirmed, reviewing the side-by-side comparison of our proprietary algorithms. And Michael's presentation, "The non-compete clause specifically prohibits sharing any Meridian intellectual property with competitors, regardless of how it's presented." "What are our options?" I asked, though I had already plotted potential pathways. "We have several," Caroline explained, slipping into her methodical legal analysis. "First, a cease and desist letter demanding he stop sharing our proprietary technology. Second, an emergency injunction prohibiting him from approaching any other companies with similar materials. Third, a breach of contract claim that could potentially void his remaining equity stake per the clawback provisions in our agreement. And fourth, added Stanley Green, my personal attorney, we could pursue criminal charges for theft of trade secrets, depending on how aggressively you want to respond. I considered our options carefully. The goal wasn't to destroy Michael. That would be an emotional response, not a strategic one. The objective was to contain the damage, protect Meridian's intellectual property, and establish unambiguous consequences for his actions. Start with the emergency injunction, I decided. Follow immediately with formal notification that he has triggered the clawback provisions. Hold the criminal charges as a contingency, but make sure he understands they remain an option if he continues this behavior. The legal machinery activated with impressive efficiency. By that afternoon, Michael had been served with court papers, seeking an emergency injunction against sharing any Meridian-related technology. The accompanying letter from our legal team detailed the evidence of his intellectual property theft and formally notified him that the clawback provisions in our separation agreement had been triggered. His response came within hours, not to me directly, but through Alan Richter, who requested an urgent meeting to resolve this misunderstanding without unnecessary escalation. He's panicking, Caroline observed when I shared the request. The clawback provisions would cost him millions in unvested equity. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning, I instructed. I want our full legal team present, plus Thomas, to address the technical aspects of the intellectual property theft. That evening, as I reviewed our legal strategy while Emma slept beside me, Michael called my personal line, something he hadn't done since our separation began. "This is excessive, Eliza," he started without preamble. "You're risking Meridian's reputation with this heavy-handed approach." "Interesting perspective," I replied calmly. "I see it as protecting Meridian's intellectual property from theft and unauthorized distribution." "It wasn't theft," he insisted. "I developed those algorithms alongside your technical team. They represent my work as much as Meridian's. The development history in our version control system indicates otherwise," I countered. "Your contributions to the healthcare AI framework were primarily administrative and marketing-focused. The core algorithms were developed by our technical team, under my direct supervision." A tense silence followed. Then, "What do you want?" "I want exactly what the legal notice specified. Immediate cessation of your attempts to shop our proprietary technology to competitors, return of all Meridian intellectual property in your possession, and compliance with the consequences outlined in our agreement." "You're destroying everything I've built," he said, anger finally breaking through his controlled facade. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. "No, Michael. I'm protecting what I built while you were busy plotting your exit strategy. The choice to violate our agreement was yours alone." After we disconnected, I received a text from Victoria. "Just heard about the injunction. Board supports your decisive action. Need any additional resources?" I smiled, appreciating her unwavering support. "Legal team has everything under control. We'll update board after tomorrow's meeting." The following morning's confrontation with Michael and his legal team proceeded exactly as I had anticipated. Alan Richter attempted to frame the situation as a misunderstanding, claiming Michael had merely drawn on his general industry knowledge rather than specific Meridian intellectual property. Thomas dismantled this defense methodically, displaying side-by-side comparisons of our proprietary algorithms and Michael's presentation materials, highlighting the identical mathematical structures beneath superficial rewording. "Perhaps most conclusive," Thomas explained, pulling up the final exhibit, "are these digital signatures embedded in the documents Mr. Reynolds presented to BioSync. They match perfectly with tracking markers our security team embedded in files accessed using Mr. Reynolds' credentials after his transition to an advisory role." Michael's face drained of color as he realized the trap he had walked into. "The honeypot files. documents we had deliberately made accessible to him, contained unique digital watermarks designed specifically to prove any future misappropriation. "This appears to be more than a misunderstanding," Caroline observed with professional detachment. "The evidence demonstrates deliberate theft of proprietary technology and willful violation of both the employment agreement and separation terms." Alan Richter attempted damage control, requesting a brief recess to consult with his client. When they returned 20 minutes later, Michael's demeanor had shifted from defensive to resigned. "My client is prepared to accept the following terms," Alan began, outlining a proposal that included returning all Meridian materials, signing an enhanced non-disclosure agreement, and accepting limited financial penalties. "That's an interesting starting point," I replied. "But it doesn't address the full scope of the violation. The clawback provisions were explicitly designed for this scenario. They will be enforced." What followed was 3 hours of tense negotiation, resulting in a settlement that achieved every objective I had identified. Michael would surrender all unvested equity, maintain only a 5% stake in Meridian, down from his original 15%, sign comprehensive non-compete and non-disclosure agreements, with severe financial penalties for any breach, and withdraw completely from any advisory role with the company. In exchange, we would not pursue criminal charges for intellectual property theft, a concession that cost us nothing while allowing Michael to save face publicly. As the attorneys finalized the documentation, Michael requested a moment alone with me. A request I granted after ensuring the meeting room's recording system remained active. "You planned this from the beginning," he said once we were ostensibly alone. "The honeypot files, the trackers, all of it." "I planned for contingencies," I corrected him. "You chose which one would activate through your own actions." His jaw tightened. "I built half this company. Those clients, those relationships, they came through my network. And you were compensated fairly for those contributions," I reminded him. "What you weren't entitled to was our intellectual property or the ability to undermine the company after choosing to betray it, and me. Is that what this is really about? Revenge for a personal indiscretion?" I studied him carefully, recognizing the man I had married but seeing him with new clarity. "That's the fundamental difference in how we view this situation, Michael. You see our marriage and Meridian as separate entities. I see them as interconnected commitments, both requiring integrity, both deserving protection when threatened. And Vanessa? Was hiring her part of your protection strategy too?" "Ms. Parker has shown impressive capabilities in her role," I replied neutrally. "Her weekly performance reviews have consistently exceeded expectations. Unlike you, she appears to have learned from her mistakes." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "She's actually working out?" "People are capable of growth when given clear boundaries and genuine opportunities," I observed. "Something to consider as you plan your next career move with what remains of your reputation." The settlement was executed by late afternoon. A press release went out announcing Michael's complete separation from Meridian to pursue independent ventures, with no mention of the intellectual property dispute or equity clawback. The company's stock dipped slightly on the news, then stabilized, as analysts recognized the minimal impact on operations given my continued leadership. That evening, I met with the board to provide a confidential briefing on the full situation. Victoria led the discussion, focusing pragmatically on the implications for Meridian's future, rather than dwelling on Michael's violations. "The intellectual property is secure," I assured them. "Our security team has implemented comprehensive protections against any similar attempts, and our legal position is unassailable should Michael attempt further violations." "And the remaining 5% equity stake?" asked Jonathan Pierce, our most financially focused board member. "It's structured as non-voting shares with significant transfer restrictions," I explained. "He cannot sell to competitors or accumulate additional shares. For all practical purposes, he's a passive minority investor with no influence on company operations." The board expressed unanimous approval of the resolution, with Victoria adding a personal note of commendation for my handling of the situation. You've demonstrated extraordinary leadership through what could have been a devastating corporate crisis. Meridian is fortunate to have you at the helm. As the meeting concluded, I received a notification from our security team. Michael had attempted one final access to our systems using an old emergency backdoor protocol, only to discover it had been closed and monitored. The attempt had been logged, documented, and added to our legal file as evidence of continued bad faith, should we need it in the future. I smiled slightly, unsurprised by his predictability. Even now, facing significant financial and professional consequences, Michael couldn't resist one last attempt to outsmart the systems I had designed. Back at my penthouse, as I nursed Emma before bed, my phone chimed with an unusual notification, an email from Vanessa Parker, sent after hours to my direct address rather than through normal channels. Ms. Reynolds, it began formally. I wanted to express my appreciation for the opportunity you've provided at Meridian. The market research position has allowed me to contribute meaningfully while learning from exemplary leadership. Your handling of recent company challenges has been particularly educational. If my performance continues to meet standards, I would welcome any feedback on building a legitimate career path based on merit rather than previous approaches. Respectfully, Vanessa Parker. I considered her message thoughtfully. It reflected a self-awareness I hadn't necessarily expected, an acknowledgement of past mistakes and apparent commitment to professional growth. Whether this represented genuine evolution or merely strategic adaptation remained to be seen, but the initial indicators were promising. I composed a brief reply. Ms. Parker, your contributions to the market research team have been noted positively by your supervisors. Continuous performance at this level will naturally lead to growth opportunities. Meridian values merit-based advancement and recognizes potential. When supported by consistent results, we can discuss specific development paths during your 90-day review. Eliza Reynolds. Setting my phone aside, I gazed down at Emma, now sleeping peacefully against my shoulder. The legal and regulatory response to Michael's betrayal had been executed with precision, protecting both Meridian's intellectual assets and our daughter's financial future. The company remained secure, its proprietary technology safeguarded, its leadership unquestioned. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the continued expansion of our healthcare AI division, negotiations with international partners, ongoing product development cycles. But for now, the immediate threat had been contained through careful application of legal and regulatory mechanisms, tools wielded not in anger, but with strategic purpose. In the soft lamplight of Emma's nursery, I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The architecture of consequence I had designed had performed exactly as intended, transforming potential disaster into controlled resolution. In business as in chess, the most effective moves weren't just about responding to your opponent's last play, they were about anticipating and shaping the entire game to come. 2 months after Michael's complete separation from Meridian, I arrived at the San Francisco Convention Center for the annual Global Tech Innovation Summit, the industry's most prestigious gathering of founders, investors, and thought leaders. This year carried special significance for Meridian. We would be unveiling our healthcare AI platform to the world for the first time. The booth setup is complete, and the demo stations are functioning perfectly, David reported as I checked in at the executive registration desk. The press contingent for your keynote is larger than anticipated. They've had to expand the main hall seating. Any particular reason for the increased interest? I asked, though I had my suspicions. David hesitated. There are rumors that Michael will be attending with the Centauri tech team. Apparently, the tech press is anticipating some kind of dramatic confrontation. I smiled, unsurprised. They'll be disappointed then. This summit is about Meridian's innovation, not personal drama. after settling Emma with Diane in our private suite. I had insisted on family-friendly accommodations for all Meridian employees attending the summit. I made my way to the exhibition floor to inspect our presentation space. The Meridian booth dominated the healthcare innovation section, its sleek design showcasing the elegant simplicity of our AI interface. Thomas met me there, tablet in hand. Final security checks are complete. The demonstration versions contain only approved public algorithms. Nothing proprietary is accessible on these systems. Perfect, I nodded. And the special feature we discussed? A slight smile crossed his normally serious face. Implemented exactly as you specified. If anyone attempts unauthorized access or tries to extract underlying code, the tracker signatures will activate. This wasn't just precaution. It was strategic foresight. I had anticipated that Michael might use the summit to gather intelligence on our public-facing technology, perhaps searching for vulnerabilities or attempting to validate that his stolen algorithms matched our current systems. The morning proceeded according to plan. Meetings with potential partners, interviews with industry publications, networking with investors interested in our next funding round. By early afternoon, our booth was consistently surrounded by the largest crowds on the exhibition floor. The demonstrations of our healthcare AI drawing impressed commentary from even our competitors. It was during one such demonstration that I spotted Michael across the exhibition hall. He was standing with a group wearing Centauri tech badges, attempting to appear casual while obviously studying our presentation. Our eyes met briefly, his gaze challenging, mine steadily neutral, before he turned away to confer with his companions. "He's been watching our booth for nearly an hour," Thomas murmured, appearing beside me with strategic timing. "Security reports he's approached 3 of our demo stations but hasn't attempted to access any systems directly." "He won't," I predicted. "He's too careful for that. He'll have someone else do it for him." As if on cue, a young man in a Centauri polo shirt approached our main demonstration kiosk, engaging our technical representative in detailed questions about the system architecture. The conversation seemed innocent enough, but his fingers moved with telling precision across the touchscreen, navigating to administrative menus hidden from casual users. I watched with quiet satisfaction as our security protocols engaged automatically. The screen briefly flickered, seemingly accepting his inputs while actually capturing his access patterns and marking any information displayed with invisible tracker signatures. "Trap set," Thomas confirmed discreetly, monitoring the security feed on his tablet. "If they use anything they've seen here in their systems, we'll have definitive evidence of corporate espionage." "I doubt it will come to that," I replied. "This is Michael testing boundaries, not implementing a serious theft attempt. He's already learned how costly that can be." My keynote address was scheduled for 4 p.m. in the main exhibition hall. As I reviewed my presentation notes one final time, Victoria Chen joined me in the speaker's preparation room. "The anticipation for your speech is palpable," she noted, settling into the chair beside me. "And not just because of the technology you're unveiling." I raised an eyebrow questioningly. "The industry has been watching how you've handled the transition," she explained. "A male co-founder attempting to undermine a female CEO is hardly a new story in tech. Your response, however, has been instructive. I've simply protected what matters: Meridian's innovation, our team's work, our investors' confidence. Without drama, without public accusations, without visible rancor," Victoria added, "all while introducing revolutionary technology and raising a newborn. You've redefined what leadership looks like in this industry, Eliza." Before I could respond, David appeared at the door. "5 minutes to your introduction, Ms. Reynolds, and you should know that Michael has taken a seat in the front row." Victoria's eyes flashed with concern. "Do you want security to relocate him?" "Not at all," I replied calmly. "His presence changes nothing about our announcement or our achievement." The main hall had reached capacity by the time I took the stage. The audience, a sea of industry leaders, investors, media, and competitors, including Michael and the Centauri Tech executives in their prominent front-row position. Emma was watching, too, safely with Diane in our private viewing suite above the hall. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice steady and clear. "Today, I'm honored to introduce technology that represents not just Meridian's innovation, but a fundamental shift in how artificial intelligence can serve healthcare around the world." What followed was a 30-minute presentation detailing our healthcare AI platform, its ability to process complex medical data, identify patterns human physicians might miss, and suggest treatment protocols based on the latest research and patient-specific factors. The demonstration showcased both technical excellence and profound human impact, featuring case studies where our prototype had already helped diagnose rare conditions in partnership with leading medical centers. Throughout the presentation, I maintained eye contact with various sections of the audience, occasionally including Michael in my scanning gaze without giving him special attention. His expression remained carefully neutral, though I could read the tension in his posture, the recognition that the technology being unveiled had evolved far beyond the algorithms he had attempted to appropriate. This platform represents years of dedicated work by Meridian's exceptional team, I concluded, and demonstrates our commitment to ethical innovation that genuinely improves lives. Today marks not an endpoint, but a beginning of partnerships, of possibilities, of progress that honors both technological advancement and human dignity. The applause was immediate and sustained. As I moved to the Q&A portion, the first question came from a technology reporter in the second row. "Ms. Reynolds, this platform clearly positions Meridian as a leader in healthcare AI. How has the recent leadership transition affected the development timeline?" It was the opening I had anticipated, the attempt to inject personal drama into a technological achievement. I smiled, accepting the question with grace. Meridian's strength has always been our team's collective expertise and shared vision. Leadership transitions are part of any company's evolution. What matters is maintaining focus on innovation and execution, which I'm proud to say our team has done exceptionally well. My response set the tone for the remainder of the Q&A. Professional, forward-looking, centered on technology rather than personality. When a question did emerge about competitive tensions with Centauri Tech given Michael's presence, I deflected it deftly. The healthcare AI space is large enough for multiple approaches. We welcome all serious participants who share our commitment to ethical innovation and patient outcomes. Competition drives excellence when it focuses on genuine advancement rather than imitation. The subtle message wasn't lost on the industry insiders present, a poised reminder of the intellectual property dispute without directly mentioning it. As the session concluded, I was approached by numerous potential partners, including several major hospital systems eager to implement our platform. Throughout these conversations, I was conscious of Michael observing from a distance, his Centauri colleagues huddled around him in what appeared to be an intense discussion. "They're realizing they've fallen behind," Thomas commented, joining me between meetings. "Based on their reactions, I'd estimate their development is at least 18 months behind our current implementation. Which explains their interest in shortcuts," I noted. "Keep the security protocols active throughout the summit. I suspect they'll make at least one more attempt to extract technical details." That evening's gala dinner brought together the summit's most influential attendees in the convention center's grand ballroom. I arrived deliberately late, Emma peacefully asleep in her carrier, another calculated choice that demonstrated my integration of motherhood and leadership without apology. "Bold statement," Victoria commented approvingly as I joined her table. "Bringing your daughter to the industry's most exclusive networking event." "Emma is part of my reality," I replied simply. "I see no reason to pretend otherwise, especially when we're advocating for more inclusive workplaces." The dinner progressed with the usual speeches and awards, followed by open networking. I was engaged in conversation with the CEO of a major hospital network when I noticed a commotion near the ballroom entrance. Michael was being escorted out by Summit security, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. David appeared at my side moments later, keeping his voice low. Mr. Reynolds attempted to access the private demonstration suite using his old Meridian credentials. Security protocols flagged the attempt immediately. I nodded, unsurprised, yet still disappointed by his persistence. Was anything compromised? Nothing. At all. The honeypot activated as designed. He was granted access to a sandboxed environment containing only non-proprietary information. Every file viewed has been marked with trackers. Excellent. Make sure the incident report is documented for our legal team, but there's no need to make a public issue of it. As the evening continued, news of Michael's removal spread through, the gathering in subtle whispers and glances my way. Rather than acknowledge the incident, I maintained focus on positive connections, finalizing a partnership agreement with the hospital network CEO, discussing expansion funding with potential investors, arranging follow-up meetings with international distributors. Near the end of the evening, I was approached by Lawrence Chen, Centauri Tech's founder and CEO, a respected industry veteran, who had previously kept his distance during the summit. "Impressive presentation today, Eliza," he offered, his expression suggesting he had more to say. "I wanted to personally assure you that Centauri had no knowledge of Michael's activities regarding Meridian's intellectual property." "I appreciate that clarification," I replied carefully. "Meridian values ethical competition that drives genuine innovation." He nodded, understanding my measured response. "Michael's consulting agreement with Centauri has been terminated, effective immediately. His actions don't align with our corporate values." This was significant news, a public distancing that would effectively isolate Michael within the industry. Lawrence was making it clear that Centauri would not protect or enable Michael's attempts to leverage stolen intellectual property. "A wise decision," I acknowledged. "The healthcare AI space benefits from competitors who respect boundaries and focus on original innovation." After Lawrence departed, Victoria rejoined me, having observed our exchange from nearby. That was unexpected. Lawrence is notoriously protective of his people. Michael is no longer his people, I noted. Lawrence is protecting Centauri's reputation and legal position. It's a business decision, not a personal one. "Just as your handling of this entire situation has been," Victoria observed with knowing appreciation. "You've managed to neutralize Michael professionally without ever making it appear personal or vindictive. That's a masterclass in executive leadership, Eliza." As the gala concluded, I gathered Emma and prepared to return to our hotel. The summit had achieved everything I had intended. The successful launch of our healthcare AI platform. Positive. Reception from potential partners, enhanced investor confidence, and a subtle but unmistakable clarification of Meridian's industry position, post-Michael. The public revelation of our technology had done what legal proceedings alone could not, demonstrated, unequivocally, that Meridian's innovation had continued and accelerated despite Michael's departure. His attempt to position himself as essential to our success had been thoroughly disproven on the industry's most visible stage. More importantly, his final desperate attempt to access our systems had revealed his continued willingness to cross ethical and legal boundaries, resulting in his rejection by Centauri, effectively closing the door on his immediate professional prospects within our industry. As I settled into the car with Emma sleeping peacefully beside me, I reflected on how public perception had shifted over the course of the summit. I had arrived as an object of curiosity, the betrayed wife, the challenged CEO, the new mother navigating personal and professional crises simultaneously. I was leaving as something else entirely, the visionary leader who had maintained composure, under pressure, protected her company's innovation, and emerged stronger and more respected than before. The narrative had been rewritten not through dramatic confrontation, but through consistent demonstration of capability, integrity, and strategic foresight. Michael's public humiliation had not been my objective. merely the natural consequence of his own choices colliding with the protective systems I had put in place. The industry had witnessed not a vindictive response to betrayal, but a lesson in professional consequence and resilience. Tomorrow would bring the summit's final day, more partnership discussions, and continued momentum for Meridian's healthcare AI platform. But tonight had already cemented what mattered most: the public understanding that Meridian's success was built on genuine innovation protected by principled leadership, not on shortcuts, deception, or misappropriated ideas. 1 year after discovering Michael's betrayal in the delivery room, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Meridian's expanded headquarters, watching Emma take tentative steps across my office with Diane's gentle guidance. My daughter's first birthday had coincided with another milestone: Meridian's healthcare AI platform receiving FDA approval, the culmination of years of development and rigorous clinical trials. "She's getting more confident every day," Thomas observed from the doorway, smiling at Emma's determined expression as she navigated the short distance between Diane's hands and my desk. "Just like her mother," Victoria added, entering behind him with a tablet displaying our latest market valuation. The stock jumped another 12% on the FDA announcement. Meridian has officially doubled in value since last year. I nodded, appreciating the symmetry. "The board meeting is in 30 minutes. Are the quarterly reports ready?" "All prepared," Thomas confirmed, along with the special announcement package for the expansion initiative. This board meeting would be particularly significant. We would be voting on Meridian's most ambitious growth plan to date, a comprehensive strategy to expand our healthcare AI platform internationally while developing new applications for underserved medical fields. The funding was secured, the technology proven, the team expanded and energized. "Ms. Reynolds," David appeared with his characteristic perfect timing. "Ms. Parker is here for your 9:30 meeting." I checked my watch, noting that Vanessa was precisely on time, as she had been for every meeting since joining Meridian. "Send her in." Vanessa entered with a quiet confidence that differed markedly from her initial interview demeanor. Gone was the calculated charm, replaced by a focused professionalism that had earned her 2 promotions over the past year. "The market research analysis for the Asia-Pacific expansion is complete," she reported, handing me a comprehensive folder. "We've identified key regional adoption factors and potential partnership opportunities in 5 primary markets." I reviewed the executive summary, impressed by the thoroughness of her analysis. "This is excellent work, Vanessa. The board will appreciate such detailed market intelligence for the expansion vote." She nodded, maintaining the professional boundary that had characterized our relationship since her first day. "Thank you. The team worked hard to ensure we covered all potential variables." "Your leadership of the research division has been noticed," I acknowledged. "Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting. With the international expansion approved, we'll need a director of global market strategy. Someone who understands both the technology and regional market dynamics." Her expression remained carefully neutral, though I caught the brief flash of surprise in her eyes. "That's a significant position." "It is," I agreed, "and one that would report directly to Thomas, as COO, with substantial independence and responsibility." The subtle shift in her posture was telling, a straightening of the shoulders, a focused intentness that revealed genuine ambition rather than calculated maneuvering. "May I ask why you're considering me? Given our complicated history, it was the first direct reference either of us had made to the circumstances of her hiring in nearly a year, a subject we had mutually avoided through unspoken agreement. "I'm considering you because you've earned it," I replied honestly. "Your work has consistently exceeded expectations. You've built a team that delivers exceptional analysis. You've demonstrated the ability to separate personal history from professional performance." I paused, deciding complete candor was appropriate given the significance of the role. "When I offered you an entry-level position, I was giving you an opportunity to prove whether your talents were genuine or merely leveraged through inappropriate relationships. You've convincingly demonstrated the former. She absorbed this assessment with a thoughtfulness that reflected her evolution over the past year. I appreciate your directness and your willingness to judge me by my work rather than my worst decisions. That's how meritocracy functions, I observed. The position profile is in the folder. Review it, consider whether it aligns with your career goals, and let Thomas know your decision by Friday. After she departed, Victoria raised an eyebrow. Global Market Strategy Director? That's quite a promotion from where she started. It's appropriate for her contributions, I replied simply. Holding her permanently accountable for past mistakes would be just as inappropriate as ignoring them entirely. She's earned this opportunity through consistent performance. Victoria studied me with that penetrating gaze that had evaluated countless executives throughout her career. You continue to surprise me, Eliza. Most would find it impossible to separate personal history from professional assessment in such a situation. It's not about forgiveness, I clarified. It's about recognizing value objectively. Meridian benefits from her abilities. My personal feelings are irrelevant to that equation. The board meeting proceeded with unanimous approval for our expansion initiative. The quarterly financials had exceeded projections across all divisions. Our healthcare AI platform was generating significant licensing revenue, and the research pipeline contained 3 promising new applications in advanced development stages. Before we conclude, Victoria announced as chairperson, the board wishes to formalize a decision we've been discussing for some time. She slid an official document across the table to me. We're amending Meridian's corporate structure to permanently secure your position as CEO and majority controlling shareholder. I reviewed the document carefully, recognizing its significance. This would prevent any future attempt to remove me through board action or shareholder maneuvers. Precisely, Victoria confirmed. Your leadership over the past year, particularly through the challenges of the transition, has demonstrated beyond question that Meridian's success is intrinsically linked to your vision and execution. The board's unanimous vote on this amendment represented more than professional confidence. It was institutional recognition that my role as founder and leader transcended normal corporate dynamics. As the meeting concluded, I received an unexpected message, a notification from our legal team that Michael had officially sold his remaining 5% stake in Meridian, liquidating his final connection to the company he had tried to undermine. An interesting development, Thomas noted when I shared the information. Any indication of the buyer? An investment group based in Singapore, I replied, scanning the transaction details. No direct competitors or concerning affiliations. It appears to be a purely financial investment. So that chapter is truly closed, he observed. It has been for some time, I reflected. This is merely the formal conclusion. Later that afternoon, I took Emma to the park near our home, a weekly tradition I had maintained regardless of Meridian's demands. As she explored the sandbox with determined concentration, I noticed a familiar figure approaching across the, grass. Michael looked different. Thinner, less polished, his confident stride replaced by a more hesitant gait. He stopped several feet away, clearly uncertain of his reception. I heard about the FDA approval, he said, after an awkward moment. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied neutrally, keeping Emma within arm's reach. I understand you've sold your remaining shares. He nodded, glancing toward our daughter with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. It seemed time for a clean break. I'm relocating to London next month. Executive position with a financial technology startup. A fresh start, I observed, neither approving nor condemning. Something like that. He shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to see Emma before I left, and to say something I should have said a year ago. I waited, maintaining the emotional distance I had cultivated since our separation. I'm sorry, Eliza. The word seemed to cost him considerable effort. Not just for Vanessa, But for everything, the attempted company takeover, the intellectual property theft, all of it, I convinced myself I deserved more than I had, that my contributions weren't properly valued. I was wrong. I studied him carefully, assessing the sincerity behind this unexpected apology. What prompted this revelation? A rueful smile crossed his face. Reality. Every company that initially showed interest in working with me withdrew after learning the details from industry contacts. Venture capital firms wouldn't touch my proposals. Even Vanessa. He stopped himself. Well, you know that part better than I do. Emma had noticed him now, regarding this unfamiliar man with curiosity but no recognition. The sight seemed to affect Michael deeply. She doesn't know me at all, he said quietly. You made choices that limited your presence in her life, I replied, neither accusatory nor sympathetic. The visitation schedule in our agreement provided opportunities you rarely used. He nodded, acknowledging this truth. I told myself I was busy rebuilding my career, that there would be time later. Another miscalculation. The conversation lapsed into silence as we both watched Emma return to her determined excavation of the sandbox. Finally, Michael spoke again. The London position is a second chance I probably don't deserve. But I'd like to do better with Emma, even from a distance, to be some kind of father to her if you're willing. I considered his request carefully, weighing Emma's interests against the history of Michael's reliability. She deserves to know her father. Virtual visits to start, then we can reassess based on consistency. Relief washed over his features. Thank you. That's more than fair. As he turned to leave, I asked the question that had lingered since receiving the stock sale notification. Why now, Michael? Why sell your shares when Meridian's value is climbing rapidly? He paused, looking back with an expression that suggested the answer should be obvious. Because holding on to them meant staying connected to a company I tried to damage, led by a woman I betrayed who then outmaneuvered me at every turn. Some reminders are too constant to allow moving forward. After he departed, I remained at the park with Emma until sunset, reflecting on the unexpected encounter. Michael's apology and request represented yet another transition point, not reconciliation, but perhaps the beginning of a more functional dynamic for Emma's sake. The following day brought the formal announcement of Meridian's International Expansion Initiative, generating enthusiastic coverage from business publications and a corresponding surge in our stock price. Media requests flooded in, seeking interviews about the company's remarkable growth trajectory and my personal journey as a founder. For the first profile I agreed to, I chose a respected technology journal known for substantive reporting rather than sensationalism. The interviewer, a veteran technology correspondent, met me at Meridian's headquarters, where Emma's nursery and my office coexisted as visual testimony to my integrated approach to leadership and motherhood. The industry has watched Meridian's evolution with fascination, she began after the preliminary photographs were complete, particularly how you navigated the leadership transition while simultaneously bringing revolutionary technology to market and raising a newborn daughter. Looking back, what was the most challenging aspect of that period? I considered the question thoughtfully. The challenge wasn't any single element. The technology development, the corporate transition, or new motherhood. It was recognizing that these weren't competing priorities, but integrated aspects of my life that required holistic, rather than compartmentalized attention. Many would have found it impossible to maintain focus amid such personal and professional upheaval, she observed. What sustained you through that process? Clarity, I replied simply, about what mattered, what didn't, and the difference between reacting emotionally and responding strategically. When you're clear about your priorities and principles, decisions become straightforward, even in complex situations. The interview continued, exploring Meridian's technological innovations, our approach to ethical AI development, and our vision for the healthcare platform's global impact. The personal aspects, Michael's departure, the circumstances surrounding it, were addressed with professional discretion rather than invasive curiosity. As we concluded, the interviewer asked the question I had anticipated throughout our conversation. After everything you've experienced, what would you tell other women facing similar challenges? Betrayal from trusted partners, attempts to undermine their professional authority, the balancing of leadership with motherhood. I glanced toward Emma, playing contentedly in her designated area of my office under Diane's watchful eye, then back to the interviewer. I would tell them that resilience isn't about never being hurt or challenged. It's about transforming those experiences into opportunities for growth and clarity. I continued, choosing my words with precision. I would remind them that the most powerful response to betrayal isn't anger or vindictiveness. It's excellence. Success built on genuine capability, and strategic thinking is the most effective answer to anyone who underestimates your worth. The profile, published 2 weeks later, became the definitive narrative of Meridian's transformation and my leadership through that critical period. The headline: The Strategic Response: How Eliza Reynolds Turned Personal Betrayal into Professional. Triumph captured exactly what I had wanted to convey about the experience. 6 months later, as Meridian's international expansion proceeded with remarkable success, I stood on the stage at the Women in Technology Global Conference, delivering the keynote address to 5,000 attendees. Emma, now 18 months old, watched from the front row with Diane beside her, occasionally waving at her mother with delighted recognition. Resilience in leadership isn't defined by never facing challenges, I told the audience. It's measured by how we transform those challenges into opportunities for growth, not just for ourselves, but for our organizations and the people we serve. From that stage, I could see the full arc of the journey that had begun in a hospital delivery room with a text message notification. What Michael had intended as the beginning of my unraveling had instead catalyzed a profound transformation of Meridian, of my leadership approach, and of my understanding of my own capabilities. The betrayal that should have broken me had instead revealed strengths I hadn't fully recognized: strategic foresight, emotional discipline, unwavering focus on long-term objectives rather than immediate gratification. In attempting to undermine me, Michael had inadvertently provided the catalyst for my most significant professional evolution. Vanessa, seated among Meridian's executive team in the audience, had undergone her own transformation from someone who leveraged inappropriate relationships to advance her career to a respected leader who earned promotions through genuine contribution and merit. Her journey from entry-level analyst to global market strategy director represented another unexpected outcome of what began as betrayal. After the conference concluded, Victoria joined me for dinner at my penthouse while Emma slept soundly in her room. I've been reflecting on everything that's happened since that day in the delivery room, she mused, swirling the wine in her glass. The remarkable part isn't just that you survived it. It's that you emerged stronger, more focused, more effective as a leader. It clarified what matters, I acknowledged. When you're forced to protect what you've built from someone you trusted, you develop a deeper understanding of its value and your own capabilities. Most would have been consumed by the personal betrayal, Victoria observed. You channeled that energy into strategic protection and advancement instead. Emotional reactions are temporary, I replied. Strategic responses create lasting change. As Victoria departed and I checked on Emma one final time before retiring, I reflected on the journey of the past 18 months. The shock of discovering Michael's infidelity during labor had evolved into a profound lesson in resilience, strategic thinking, and the power of maintaining composure under pressure. The company had not merely survived his betrayal and attempted sabotage. It had flourished, expanding internationally, securing FDA approval for our revolutionary technology, doubling in market value. The team had grown stronger, more unified around our core mission of ethical innovation that improved lives. My own transformation had been equally significant. From a founder focused primarily on technological innovation to a leader who understood the delicate interplay of personal integrity and professional excellence. The experience had taught me that true strength wasn't found in never being betrayed, but in how you respond when trust is broken. Emma stirred slightly in her sleep, her peaceful expression reminding me of everything that truly mattered. The legacy I was building now wasn't just Meridian's technological innovation or market success. It was demonstrating for my daughter that resilience, strategic thinking, and principled leadership could transform even the most painful betrayals into platforms for growth. The woman who had discovered her husband's infidelity through a text message during labor had emerged not as a victim, but as an architect of consequence. Someone who understood that the most powerful response to betrayal wasn't emotional reaction, but strategic transformation. As I stood in the doorway of Emma's room, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, I recognized the profound truth that had emerged from this journey. Sometimes, what begins as betrayal becomes the catalyst for discovering strengths you never knew you possessed, for building foundations too solid to be shaken by another's deception. What Michael had failed to understand, in our marriage, in our company, in his attempts to undermine my position, was that resilience isn't about avoiding pain or challenge. It's about transforming those experiences into opportunities for growth, clarity, and ultimately, triumph. That transformation, from betrayed wife to strategic leader, from vulnerable new mother to empowered CEO, from reactive victim to proactive, architect of consequence, wasn't just my personal journey. It represented a template for anyone facing betrayal or attempts to diminish their worth. Excellence is the most powerful response to underestimation. Strategic thinking overcomes emotional manipulation. Principled leadership outshines deception every time. The text message that lit up Michael's phone while I was in labor had been intended as a moment of connection between him and his mistress. Instead, it had illuminated the path to a stronger, more resilient version of myself and the company I had built. And that transformation, unexpected, challenging, ultimately triumphant, was the true legacy I would pass on to Emma and to every person who heard our story. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.